This rich, arrogant thought of humiliating a black janitor without consequence, but bitterly regretted it. The Montclair Hotel was not just a luxury establishment. It was a true institution, a sanctuary of refinement where every stone, every piece of furniture, every breath of air seemed to whisper stories of power, influence and fortunes built in the shadow of confidential negotiations. Nestled in the heart of a vibrant metropolis, the hotel attracted a cosmopolitan clientele. Discreet diplomats, Hollywood stars seeking privacy, business moguls coming to seal deals worth millions. Delicately veined Italian marble stretched as far as the eye could see in the main hall, polished to perfection until it reflected the hurried footsteps of visitors. Imposing crystal chandeliers, suspended like constellations frozen in time, diffused a golden light, soft but dazzling, caressing the walls decorated with contemporary works of art chosen with obsessive care. The atmosphere there was both hushed and charged with an invisible tension, that of excessive ambitions and oversized egos which collided in silence. It was a theater where everyone played their role. The customers, the self-proclaimed kings of their own empire, and the staff, invisible extras whose sole mission was to ensure the perfection of the staging. Among these clients, William Moreau stood out for his corrosive arrogance. A millionaire entrepreneur in the real estate sector, he embodied the most toxic thing that success can produce. A blind confidence in his superiority, nourished by years of trampling on his competitors and manipulating overly gullible associates. For him, money was not just a means, but a weapon. Irrefutable proof of its value. He was not content with being rich, he had to remind himself of it at all times. With his phone attached to his ear, he belched orders to his assistant with the same casualness as a general addressing his troops. That morning, he crossed the hall of the Montclair with the confident gait of someone who believes that the world belongs to him. Dressed in a tailor-made cashmere suit, his Swiss watch gleaming discreetly on his wrist, he moved forward without paying attention to the elegance of the decor that he took for granted. His only concern, the crucial meeting that awaited him, where he intended to use his prefabricated charm and influence to conclude a strategic partnership. Then, a detail insignificant in his eyes stopped him in his tracks. A man was there, kneeling on the immaculate floor, focused on erasing a discreet mark left by the passage of a customer. This simple act of cleaning, invisible to most, was an offense to William. An obstacle in his journey to omnipotence.
The man was Thomas Boulanger.
Hotel concierge, black, in his 50s, soberly elegant despite the regulation uniform. His face was marked by years of experience, but above all by a rare serenity. His movements were precise, testifying to flawless professionalism, as if each stroke of the cloth helped maintain the illusion of perfection of the Montclair Hotel. He didn't even look up as William approached, focused on his task with quiet humility. But for William, this apparent indifference was unbearable. He stopped abruptly, frowning, his sharp gaze laden with thinly veiled contempt. "Get out of my way," he snapped, not even bothering to mask his irritation. Thomas finally looked up. Her dark eyes met William's, but far from reflecting the expected submission, there was a depth, a silent wisdom. He just nodded, without the slightest trace of resentment. "Of course, sir," he replied calmly, shifting slightly to clear the way. That should have been enough. But William's arrogance could not stand the stoic politeness, this silent dignity which, in his eyes, seemed like a provocation. He stopped again, looking Thomas up and down, as if trying to gauge the extent of what he believed to be a failed life. A mocking grin stretched his lips. "I never understood why some people were content with so little in life," he said loudly, making sure the humiliation echoed through the hall. "Cleaning up after others all day. What a pitiful fate."
Silence fell like a cleaver.
A few customers, seated nearby, suspended their conversation. Employees frozen behind the reception counter exchanged furtive glances. Some looked down, accustomed to these kinds of scenes, knowing that intervening could cost them dearly. Because in places like Montclair, the customer was king, even when he behaved like a tyrant. But Thomas did not flinch. He held William's gaze, not with defiance, but with a calmness that disarmed, for a moment, even the millionaire's arrogance. He didn't answer. Because sometimes, silence is more powerful than a response. This silence was not that of submission, but that of a man who knows who he is, and who has nothing to prove. Then, slowly, he returned to his task, as if William's words were nothing but wind. William, convinced of having asserted his superiority, walked away, satisfied with his little daily triumph. He still didn't know to what extent this man he had just despised would turn his life upside down. The next morning, Montclair shone with its usual brilliance. Crystal chandeliers cast a soft light that reflected off the walls adorned with subtle gilding. Employees worked silently, aware that a meeting of great importance was about to take place. William Moreau, dressed in an impeccably tailored suit and silk tie, walked down the hall with the same arrogance that characterized him. He had prepared his speech, refined each argument to convince the hotel management that a partnership with him was obvious. In his mind, success was already achieved. As he entered the conference room, he immediately felt the heavy atmosphere, imbued with a solemnity that he did not yet understand. The room was sumptuous. A large polished mahogany table sat proudly in the center, surrounded by fine leather armchairs. On the walls, discreetly chosen contemporary works of art recalled the refinement of the establishment. The participants, investors, board members, and hotel executives, were already seated, leafing through files or exchanging discreet greetings. William advanced with a confident step, ready to dominate the assembly with his usual charisma. But he stopped short, struck by a vision he would never have imagined. At the very end of the table, in the most strategic position, sat Thomas Boulanger. He was no longer the invisible concierge he had despised the day before. Dressed in a perfectly tailored, deep gray tailored suit, he wore a discreet gold watch that shimmered subtly in the light. His face displayed the same calm serenity, but his gaze, this time, carried the weight of authority. A silver pen rested between his fingers, alongside a folder marked with the hotel logo. William felt his heart tighten. His eyes moved nervously from Thomas to the other members of the meeting, searching for a sign that would contradict what he was seeing. He approached one of the organizers, looking annoyed, his voice slightly trembling despite his efforts to remain firm. "Who is this man?" he asked dryly, his tone betraying growing nervousness. The organizer, surprised by the question, replied in a neutral but firm tone. "Mr. Moreau, this is Thomas Boulanger, the owner of Montclair, as well as several other prestigious establishments across the country. He is the one who directs our operations and decides on strategic partnerships." A frozen silence fell over the room. You could almost hear the ticking of an invisible clock. William felt his stomach tighten. His confidence was evaporating, replaced by a growing unease.
Impossible. Are you kidding?
He whispered, unable to look away from Thomas. But Thomas wasn't kidding. He calmly put down his pen, looked up, and locked eyes with William. A discreet smile, without arrogance but full of meaning, appeared on his lips. "Ah, Monsieur Moreau," he said in a calm voice, resounding in the room like a perfectly tuned musical note. "You said yesterday that some people are satisfied with so little in life. I'm curious. What do you think is worth a man who judges others without knowing their history?" William felt sweat beading at the base of his neck. His legs suddenly felt less secure. The eyes of the investors were on him, scrutinizing, curious to see how the self-confident businessman would react. He tried to stammer out an apology, an awkward word to mask his humiliation, but Thomas raised his hand slightly, a simple gesture that was enough to silence him. "In my hotels," Thomas continued gently but firmly, "I value respect above all else. No matter wealth, status, or influence. It is human values that count. And those who treat others with contempt have no place there." He paused, letting his words sink into the room. Then he concludes with cutting clarity. "I think we're going to end this negotiation here." William turned pale. It wasn't just a contract he had just lost. It was a lesson etched in his memory forever. His arrogance had just cost him more than a golden opportunity. His reputation had just crumbled in front of influential witnesses, and there was nothing he could do about it. When he left the room, His step no longer had the same assurance. The employees he had once ignored now looked at him with a different glow, not of contempt, but of awareness. He was no longer the untouchable man he thought he was. He finally understood that each person, regardless of their role or their appearance, carried within them a story, a value that money could neither buy nor measure. For years he had believed that wealth made him a powerful man. But that day, he learned a brutal truth. True greatness lies in humility, respect, and the ability to recognize the dignity of everyone. And he would never forget this lesson.